Ryan Rodys of Clanteen, the four brothers from the early 1840s. This is Rodger, he lived here. He was married to Joanna Carr. Here's Rodger, 1845. He was married to Joanna Carr. They had Margaret, Honora, Rhodey, John, Michael, Martin and Josie. We only know of two of them. We only know information of two of them. So we'll go to Michael. Michael married Josie, his first cousin. That would be Big Josie from Dennis's line, 400 yards over the road. And they had Joe, Mary, Billy, Johnny and Mikey. Joe died quite young, well at 40 years of age from TB. Mary married John Enright from Bruff. Billy married John McMahon from Clare. Mikey didn't marry, and Johnny married Noni Burke from Kilcommon. And in 1966 they had Mike, who married Carmel O'Keefe from Tipperary Town, and they had Eva and Laura. And also then in 1972 they got four Goffs from Kilcommon. I'm one of them. Noni would have been our mother's sister. They raised us as their own then till the 1980s, when we were big enough to go. That's Rodger Ryan Rodys in the distance. Married to Johanna Ryan Carr. And this junction here now is the end of the bog road. And if you turned up the hill, you'd be going up to the end of Kyle. That's what there's a well here actually. See it? Where loads of people got their water. A very small bit of cleaning there now, and you could drink it. Just clean back that scrammels, as we used to call them. We used to come flying down around that turn as well with go-karts in the 70s. Flying down there. That's a hill down. We're coming down now. And down there around that S-bend. Well, but anyway, going back this way. Here's the bog road. Again, there's Rodgers in the distance. And this bog road now is a mile long from one end to the other. And when you pass Rodger's house there, you've only another 400 or 500 yards to go and you'll meet Denny's. And small Josie came from this house here, and she ended up going, it's actually over there towards Doon, over there in a farm they were working in Couga. They must have worked there for years, because the kids were some of them were 15 years of age and stuff when they came back. And they came back in 1930. And of course they couldn't come back to this house because there's a new different family being reared there, so they found a house beside Denny's, the little old house that they done up. Bill Franklin done up. Lived out. Bill Franklin lived up this Boreen, up Kyle Boreen. That's a dead end up there. Doherty's is the last house. And as I say, this thing then, you could only, some guy cut turf in the middle of this in the 1950s or something like that. Messed up the middle of it for a while, but it got fixed up again, and now you can drive all the way through. Before that you had to kind of come in from both sides and forget about the middle section, and they went at it again in the late 70s. the local guys, Johnny Roddy, John Doherty, a few more of them. Willie Franklin was there with him, helping him. We thought we were helping him, but we were probably just getting in the way. We were only kids. We used to bring water from the well there behind me now, over here. And oh, just to kill us. Kind of trying to carry the bucket of water. And then we got a wheelbarrow and we used to bring it in a churn. And there was a guy up here, he used to be walking around the fields some days, Jim Ryan. And Jim, he'd see us struggling, fair play to him. And he'd come down and carry the bucket. Or else he'd push the wheelbarrow. Of course we thought, what a strong man. We were delighted that he'd come and carry it for us. Oh, we'd be well wore out now by the time we're coming to here. We'd be laying it down every 10 paces with that well. We'd have to lay it down in the bucket. And eventually then we get home with it. With the help from Jim mostly, Jim Ryan. And this house now was done up a few times. The latest would have been in the 80s. Before that they would have put, see it's slated now. Before that it would have been galvanised. The galvanised was replaced as I say in the 80s, but prior to that was thatch. And the thatch was done probably the 1930s. They went on to galvanise. In fact, the galvanise that came off it was used in one of those outsheds there. That's the actual galvanise now on the lane 2 on the left. And so it's quite modern now inside it. And you'd got a jogger. There's a jogger coming in the road. I think he's winning. He's in first place, whoever he is anyway. He is, yeah. Because he can't keep up to me. Oh, he's gone. Too fast for me.
I've got to step on, I'm on the clock.
Do. He's clocking himself. The phone's after falling out. The phone fell out with that joke. Anyway, enough of that messing. We'll go back to Rodger and Joanna Carr. And as I say, we only know about 2 of their children. We've just done Michael. We'll go on to Josie now. Small Josie, she was known as. 1887 she was born. She married Paddy Ryan Currig. Paddy Ryan Currig. They worked in Ryan Luke's, alright, over in Cougar until he left eventually. And they had all these guys: Tom, Paddy, Jim, Rodgy, Willie and Josie. All these guys, they were raised as, they were called Ryan Rodys instead of Ryan Currigs. Paddy Ryan Currig, he died in 1943 in Manchester. So you'll have to pause the video. There's a lot of names down here to take stock of. This now is the gable end of small Josie's house when she lived there with her children. The gable end is facing the road. It was 15 feet. It was 15 feet by 12 one time, but it did get extended. This one then would be the house where her aunt and uncle would have lived. Dennis Ryan Roddy would have been married to Joanna Ryan Luke. He would have lived in this one. Well, this is what I think it would have looked like. It had only 2 windows in the 1901 census. By the 1911 census, it had 3 windows. Probably converted one of the out sheds onto the side of it and made the house longer. And that's where small Josie lived. People could look in through that window on the gable going to school. What time is it, Josie? 9 o'clock, Biddy. What time is it, Josie? 10 o'clock, Tom. Maybe the Dohertys, they were the older people of the Dohertys. They used to be passing there. There's another gal at the Dohertys used to look in through the window and see the border. There was a nice bit of border on between the, I supposed to be only about 1.5 inches thick, them little borders they had years ago. They used to be looking in through the window and be passing, because she was gone at that stage. She was gone in 1953. I come down along then, and you'll see the house where not her father and mother now, but her aunt and uncle lived. She wasn't born here. Small Josie wasn't born here. And that'd be the gable of her house now. Not her, sorry, that would be the gable of Ginny and Joanna's house, between the paint gallon and the yellow shirt. And if you looked across the yard, then was the outhouse that was converted by Bill Franklin and Mike Ryan Roddy, Paddy the teacher's brother. The red bit is the extra piece that was put on. Originally the house would have been 15 feet road frontage and 12 foot down to the door, say, and then they extended it and they put a porch sticking out, and they built the chimney on. They built on about another 8 feet, and they would more than likely have got the stones just across from the old house, which would have been derelict at that stage. It was converted for Josie, small Josie, when she came back from a house they were living in over in Cougar, herself and Paddy Ryan, what's his name, Paddy Ryan Corrig. And when he left, so she had to come back here then, and with some of her kids, some of them were big enough to go out in the world. But we'll see go back again now to Ginny, across the yard now. We're looking at the older house of her aunt and uncle. They'd left about 1920, I would say. They would have been dead by 1920. And yet by 1930, this house mustn't have been good enough to live in, because when Josie came back, she had to move in across the yard in that outshed. And that was only 10 years after, presumably, her aunt and uncle had died. But of course, the place was probably not good enough to live in. And oh, sorry, hit a tree there with the camera. So what did they do? Bill Franklin and Mike Ryan Roddy, they built. That section is new anyway, because when you look at the drawing, the whole thing stops there. So I'm gone in now. I'm going in the front door. The door, there's only one door. And they built a porch as well. There's the corner of the porch coming out there. One of the wing walls of the porch coming out there. The other one would have been there. And they built that with the chimney. I'll go into the house now. There's one of the chimney walls. But the whole section was new, like. The whole section from, there's a door that had just come in. From that door onwards, that way, was new. It was about 12 by 12, the front of it, or 15 by 12. And it ended up, what would you call that, another 8 feet, I suppose, by the whole width. So in she comes anyway, and this is the only house that anybody remembers. That's the wall there now again. That's the road wall along there. Can't really see it behind the briars. You might be able to see the road there. That's the road now where the kids will be walking past, going to school. And when Josie looked out her door now was complete opposite to the sun. Because the sun was coming up behind her. But of course it was only a shed originally, so that's why it was facing towards the main house, which is over there. It's between the orange and the yellow, and there's a bit of a height there, so chances are there's a lot of stones there. That's where they would have got the stones, no doubt. They would have got the stones there to build the extension with the chimney, and there'll probably be a garden of spuds along there. This is happening now. Let's see, this house here, Denny Ryan Roddy and Johanna Ryan Luke's house, that would probably went up around, oh God, I had it worked out now. I'll have it written down there. And all these houses would have went up around the same time, including the outhouses. And then you would have, this one was inhabited as a dwelling house from 1930 until 1950. And then that lady went down to Capamore. She went down to Wright's, her daughter-in-law. Her daughter was married Wright, so her son-in-laws were Wrights. That's where she ended up. She died at 103, maybe even more. And that is the gist of it. Behind that house now, of course, there's another dwelling house. Who was living here at all now? Oh, I have it written down. We'll find out. I'll find it there on a piece of paper. We'll go out onto the road again. That's going out towards Rare Cross now. Well, the road that goes to Rare Cross. This is actually the bog road. It's tarred since, I'd say, the late 70s. Where that van is now is, we call it Doherty's Boreen, but it was known as Hayes's Boreen before that. That little corner there now. That's jutting out. It's jutting out there. Does it? I don't know if we can see it. See, this house, Denny's house, isn't square off the Boreen. I'd say it was angled more for the sun, if anything. And then when you look back, that's going in towards the Kyle Boreen. And just over the road there, 200 yards, is Johnny Rodys, who would have been from the Rodger Ryan line. That's actually where small Josie would have come from. She came from the house over there. And the funny thing is, the woman that ended up there, over in Rodger's house over there, she was known as Big Josie, and she was actually born here. She did live in this one, and she never lived in that one that was done up. That was only lived in for 20 years, from 1930 to 1950. But still, done its job. in 1901 that house was fourth class house, and by 1911 it was a second class house. And what brought up the class was and also in 1901 there was 4 outhouses. There was only 3 outhouses then in the next census, and they must have used one of the outhouses to build on an extension, because it went from 2 windows in the front to 3 windows in the front, and it also went from what they were saying was the soft walls to hard walls. So maybe they just plastered it, but there's no sign of any, well, in fairness, how the hell would you see plaster on these walls if it's even fell off of the further in wall there that was only extended in 1950. So this has been a full 100 years before anyway, this one. It's not on the 1830 map. It is on the 1925 map, but it is mentioned in 1851 in Griffith's valuation that there's a guy called Hayes renting along here, some guy called Fogarty as well. So the houses must have come up around that time, we'll guess between 1835 and 1845, and that's how they'd get the class of the house risen, would be extended, and also when there's less people living in the house, because they'd have more room. All these old bottles there as well, they're probably from they're half pint beer bottles. That one, I can't remember what used to be in that. It looks like a chef sauce bottle, but I thought it might be older. I reckon they're there from, they're probably there from Josie's time, maybe. The one that lived in the house in there, you can see it in through the ditch. The old paint gallon was only dumped there recently, but there was a gap there between those 2 houses. There was actually a gap going along there, and that dark corner then is another house. That wall too is less than 2 foot thick, and I think it's just dry stone. I can't see any mortar on it, and I also couldn't see any let's say whitewash on it, unless it was plastered and it all fell off one time. The mud walls, sometimes you'd see a hole in a field beside where a little cottage was, where they would have dug down to get all the mud, because they have to go down under the topsoil to get the mud. You can't build it with just the black clay and stuff. So now, look, it'd be very hard to see a hole in the field here, even though there was a number of houses built here. You wouldn't know. Here's the graves of a lot of the Ryan Rodys, Ballinure graveyard, between Bilbo and Maru.